Hi everyone, my name is Shauna, and first I want to thank you for tuning into this video and hearing my story about my departure out of the Jehovah's Witness organization, as you saw by the title. If you are watching this video, you may have, been watching other people's stories, other Jehovah's Witnesses who've freed themselves and come out and been sharing their truth about how they've realized it's not the truth, as we were all so brainwashed and conditioned to believe. So this is my story. It's been a real long time coming. I actually left almost 19 years ago, actually. Literally almost to the day, to be honest. It's really quite remarkable when I think about what I've lived through during this time. And there was so much that happened while in the organization and while out, that a lot is actually very worthy of sharing, and I do believe and know that we are really here to help each other, share by our stories, help encourage and inspire others. And I know a very strong motivating force for me in doing this video is because what happened to me was so intense and severe that I want to share, to help others to see that they can break free of the brainwashing, of the conditioning, and that we can step out of the fear that we've been conditioned to live with all our life. If we're not pleasing Jehovah or doing something for Jehovah, it's the guilt that's piled on is truly terrible, and it's something that ever since I left, I've obviously felt very strongly about, obviously, how I was treated, being shunned, and I'll get into the details of the story soon. However, I just want to say that leaving sometimes is not enough. And I say this because I left when I literally just turned 27 years old. And I can honestly say that I didn't get deconditioned or de-brainwashed until only a few years ago. And even in these last few years of me deconditioning myself and waking up to the truth, in that that's not the truth, I've realized that it's so much more that we really break out of the mental conditioning that we were programmed with, because that's literally what it was. This is what cults do, and the Jehovah's Witness organization is a cult. It's a cult by every definition of the term. So we were so brainwashed and conditioned to live in fear of, and to be literally following to the letter anything and everything that Jehovah said, and of course all coming through divine inspiration through the governing body, as many of you who are or were Jehovah's Witnesses know about. Those who don't know, well, I'm sure you've heard it by now, that this organization's head office, the governing body, is supposed to be divinely inspired of God's teachings, Jehovah's teachings, to pass down onto the flock, so that we can continue to find His blessing and please Him in every which way possible. So this is something that doesn't just go away once you exit the religion, and I'm here to share my story to help those realize that sometimes leaving is not enough. You really do have to search your heart and find out what your truth is. And this is something that I've taken great pains in doing for myself, to really decondition, because there was a lot more that happened in my past than I realized. And this is actually my birthday today, January 5th. I've turned 45 years old, and I can honestly say that what I'm doing right now in doing this video and sharing my story is and has been one of the greatest fears I've had, because of the conditioning and the fear that is imposed on us. And it's a little more than that, as I'll get into in future videos. I don't know if I have enough time to get into everything in one video. I don't want to make them too long, but I will break them up into several little bits. But let me get back to the day one of this religion and how it affected and started in my life. So basically my father came from a family, unfortunately it was a rough childhood. He was, it was abusive father, alcoholic, beatings. It was very rough for him. He actually ended up running away from home at 17 years old. And he, on his journey of running away, he met my mother, who was actually a few years younger than him. So I think they were like 17 and maybe 14, 15 at the time. And they ran away together. She actually also had a very rough upbringing in childhood. She, from what I know, was in an orphanage and had also run away from the orphanage because it was really terrible there and they didn't treat her well. This is what I've been told. So they basically met on their, both of them running away, and they met on their journey together and eventually fell in love, and they had my sister and I, very young. They were very young when they had us. They were in their late teens and or very early 20s for my dad, in my case, when I was born. So at this point they had ran away and traveled across Canada together, and wound up in BC. And in BC, this is where the Jehovah's Witnesses, I guess, came knocking on their door. And they took to it quite heartily right away. In fact, my dad apparently just ravenously ate up the material. And from having such a rough childhood and being so lost in his own right at the time, I believe that, I guess, he saw this as being an answer to his prayers. It gave him, obviously, solace and comfort at the time, being offered, the paradise and what Jehovah God would do for us, for the sheep-like ones and stuff like this. So they both studied the religion and pretty quickly got baptized. I think, I recall my father saying that my mom wasn't as into it as he was, but he was for the both of them. But unfortunately, what happened after is that my mom and dad did split. I believe the religion was not a fit for her, and they did split, and they apparently did fight for custody for us, and my dad won. So he got custody of my sister and I, and so she was gone. My biological mother was gone from around, I believe I was about 1.5. So I was a baby still, and my sister was 2.5. So we were still pretty close in age, but here we were with my dad now, alone. Pardon me. And so we were basically, still, I guess, going to all the meetings and doing all of this with my dad. My dad lived in BC at the time, raising the both of us together. I remember him saying that he would have several jobs to kind of keep us, and eventually what ended up happening is he ended up moving back to Quebec. The religion had obviously really cleaned him up. Before he became a Jehovah's Witness, he had very long hippie-like hair apparently, and his dad obviously there was major issues with his father as he did run away from home. So my dad felt really good about coming back home, not to live with his parents, but like to come back and visit his parents and be all cleanly shaven, in a nice suit, 2 daughters, life in order, so to speak. First time he came back, it was with my biological mother, so he was all proud to, kind of show off his new life and show how he had progressed as a man. So my dad was very, very into the religion. And so when he moved back to Quebec and eventually had separated from my biological mother, she basically was gone. And I guess what she had told my dad is that she would continue to write to him, write letters to us, her daughters, so that she could kind of keep in touch, you know. Eventually my dad ended up finding a wife in the religion, and my sister and I remember being very excited, you know, asking her if she was going to be our new mommy, and we were about 4 and 5 at the time, so pretty young, pretty malleable still, you know. And of course, all this time we were, you know, doing the meetings and doing all that with my dad. So when my dad married again, she was just as into the religion as he was. And she basically had also been raised in it, although by a single parent household. Not that her mom was single; she was married, but it was only her mom that was a Jehovah's Witness, not her father. So she had been in and out a little bit, and then, you know, she was obviously in it hardcore when she met my father. They met at a convention, actually. So they quickly got together, got married. You know, we carried on as a family. She had her 2 children as well, actually. So I had, you know, a stepbrother and stepsister. The 4 of us together as kids. I was the youngest, and my brother was the oldest. And they were a little older than my sister and I. So when my dad and their mom got married, they were about 7 and 9. So they were already, you know, developing a bit of a critical mind as to what they like, what they don't like, certain things like that. They still had contact with their father, so they were able to go and stay with their dad on every other weekend. So that was one thing that kind of allowed my stepbrother and sister to have a foot in the world, as you would say, as the Jehovah's Witnesses say. So they, you know, on weekends with their dad, they would obviously get to celebrate birthdays, you know, have holidays like Christmas, things like this. Whereas my sister and I, we didn't have contact at all with my biological mother. She was never spoken about. We never heard about her. We were never aware that she was apparently writing us letters the whole time through our childhood, because we ultimately never got them, which is another story, but I'll circle around to that. So basically my sister and I were we took to the religion pretty hardcore right away. I was the type that was very spiritual anyway as a child. I was very joyful. I loved all life. I was the type that, you know, could sit there and watch and play with ants for hours and hours, and I would literally like go around and save bugs and rescue them. Life was very important to me, and is very important. I've always been that way, and I don't aim to change that. Life is very important no matter how big or small. I've always been that way. And so I would be the one in my family always fighting with my brothers and sisters to not pull the wings off flies and stuff like that. So I was a very sensitive child. So I took very, very quickly and strongly to the religion. I was, you could easily say I was publishing in the field service by 6, 7 years old. Very proud to, you know, deliver my own little presentations with my tract. And I think my first talk as a woman, of course, as a sister, was when I was like 8, you know. So I was very young and you know, thoroughly immersed right into the religion. Loved it, actually, even, because I very much resonated with Jesus and the fact that he stands for love and non-judgmental, you know, and the fact that we are made in God's image, Jesus' image, the fact that, you know, this is the way, you know, we are, we're meant to be, and the way we should behave, and that resonated strongly with me. It was very, I felt very good about that, actually, and I always felt very close to God. I really did, and do, actually. So nothing has changed. I mean, obviously some stuff has changed, but you get what I'm saying. So I was very astute, very into it, reading. I mean, I ravenously ate up all the information on the Jehovah's Witness organization as I could. I remember, you know, early 1980s, I was like, you know, learning how to read, and I was really into it and wanting to literally eat up all of the previous information that was published. So I would grab Watchtower and Awake volumes prior to my even being born, and reading them, you know, and seeing if I'd missed anything, and what else could I glean about this, about Jehovah, and what information he had for us. I just wanted to eat it all up, you know. So I was really sold, really into it. I mean, I was giving talks all the time. I eventually very quickly became one of the sisters in the congregation that you could ask to do a last minute talk, you know, and I would. And a lot of times it would be one of my best talks, the impromptu type, you know, not impromptu, but, you know, with very little preparation and notice, you know. So I did very, very well. It just bought right into it. I actually was very much wanting to get baptized when I was like 12, 13. My parents didn't have it. They thought I was too young to get baptized at that time. So they actually made me wait till I was 16, which I did. And then my sister and I got baptized together, which was nice. So now here's a note that I would like to add. My stepsister, and she'll remind me to this day, she always tells me, she's like, do you remember what I said to you the day you got baptized? And I do remember. I remember she, first of all, her and my brother never did get baptized. So they were never officially Jehovah's Witnesses ever. So she said to me on the day of my baptism, she's like, Shauna, don't do it. She's like, you're just too much like me. You have a thirst and a curiosity for the world. You're gonna wanna go and experience life and live it and taste it for yourself, and then you can make your decision. And I remember being so conditioned and brainwashed, and I literally, as she spoke to me, I even said in my head, obviously not to her, but I was like, get behind me, Satan. I was really like, no, this is opposition. She's trying to detract me from my mission and purpose, and I'm meant to serve God this way. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to dedicate my life and give it over and devote every ounce of time and energy I possibly could to the ministry. So I did. And right out of high school, even, you know, before I graduated high school, my sister and I would auxiliary pioneer in the summer break, you know. We started that, I think, 15, 16, we were auxiliary pioneering. And by the time I graduated out of high school, by 17, 18, I started to regular pioneer right away, you know. So I actually regular pioneered up until almost the end. I was actually removed as a pioneer before I did leave, but altogether you could say I pioneered for about 10 years, about that. And if you add it all up, it's probably more than that, to be honest. But and back at the time, I don't know if I know the requirement for hours has changed quite a bit. I believe it's 70 now to be a regular pioneer. But back in the day when I was regular pioneer, it was 90. It was 90 at the time. So it was a tall order, you know, to reach your hours, 90 hours a month, and, you know, preaching and teaching in the ministry and working part-time to support yourself, you know. I actually moved out of home quite early, at 17, with my sister and another sister that moved into our congregation. So we were out quite early and pioneering and supporting ourselves. And in fact, by 19, I had moved to Toronto to learn Russian with another friend I had made through my roommate, her cousin actually. And we decided to move to Toronto to learn Russian together. There was a great need for Russian, you know, speaking brothers and sisters in Toronto. There was a huge influx, you know, of Russians at the time in Toronto. And there was a program that was being taken over where you could learn, you know, take a 6-month Russian intensive course for free. So my friend at the time and I thought that was, you know, an omen for us to, you know, Jehovah's blessing to go and do this and room together. So we did, you know, we moved to Toronto together, and We had another roommate with us, and the three of us pioneered. The three of us took Russian together, and we were having a real great time, in this course. But the brothers in the congregation where we were, they felt we were dividing ourselves too thin by serving in the English and the Russian and learning the Russian, and that we just weren't as effective, obviously, in Russian as we were in English, and obviously that's true. I mean, English was our mother tongue, so obviously we could converse and really reason with people from the scriptures much more efficiently than we could in Russian, obviously. But the experience was fun, I had a blast in Toronto, to be honest. It was the first time I was on my own, like I had always been linked with my sister all the time. Like, she was my best friend growing up. We were only 15 months apart, so we started pioneering together. We went to school together. We did everything together. We moved out together, and so when I moved to Toronto, this was the first time I was away from her on my own, and where anyone that eventually came to know and meet me, they didn't know anything about my family, where I came from, who my parents were, who my sister was, that I even had a sister. It was literally, they knew me for me, and that was a huge deal for me. So that was very liberating. I was really stepping into my own. I was making amazing friends in the congregations in Toronto. I had found, cleaning work pretty quickly to support myself. And I was actually doing very well in the organization. I was doing talks all the time, being called on to do talks. I was even, being asked to do parts at assemblies and conventions. And as any witnesses out there know, this is usually a great privilege to do that. To be chosen by Jehovah, if you will, or to be blessed enough to be able to share your experiences, or whether or not you were a model youth to, for other youths to follow and stuff like that. So I did very well in Toronto. So I was I was going out in the ministry. I was helping in the congregation on quick builds here and there, doing parts at assemblies. The biggest one was at the Sky Dome back then, when we had them at the Sky Dome in front of like 20,000 people. That was pretty intense. And I remember being just so thankful and blessed by Jehovah to do this part, at this convention. And it's actually technically from there where it gets really interesting for me. I actually had been contacted by my biological mother at the time. And I will save this story for a future video, but it's significant. So yeah, she had contacted me when I was 21 in Toronto, and it was pretty wild, actually. She had even said she was studying to become a Jehovah's Witness again so that she could, connect with me and my sister. So that was really touching, and I was really excited, to get to know her. It didn't ultimately happen, but again, I'll come back to that part. So fast forward a little more. I'm having a blast, doing all kinds of fun things in Toronto, doing night witnessing, the street witnessing around the whole, doing parts at conventions and working on quick builds. And I was also very athletic. So I was also always, doing different things with the brothers and sisters in the congregation: volleyball, basketball, skiing, rollerblading, tennis, you name it. So there was always something going on. I was very, very busy. Sometimes I remember my parents would worry that I wasn't getting my personal studies done and stuff like that. But I was pretty good. I tried to really make sure I kept with my studies, because I knew how important it was. I knew that my relationship with Jehovah was based on what I put into it, obviously. So although I was having a lot of fun, I was starting to party a little bit, just going to clubs a little bit here and there with some of the brothers and sisters in the congregation that were, kind of on the edge, and having a good time. So, but I honestly felt good about it, because I felt like I was the type of person that really could get along with the most zealous witness out there, and I could get along with ones who were, just trying to hold on, if you will, the weaker ones. But I felt like I could be a positive influence. So it was quite busy. A lot going on. Eventually, my sister, who at the time had moved and started learning Spanish with the roommate that we had originally moved out with, to go down and serve in Honduras, and so they had been doing that 6 months here, 6 months there, a few times, a few years, and I guess I had been now in Toronto for about 4 years, about 4 years, and she was closing in on the age of 26, 27, and I guess she felt that she really was gonna want to get married soon, so she really wanted me to move back in with her so that we could live together again before that happened and stuff, and so I decided she convinced me to move back to Montreal to live with her again and the roommate that we had originally. And because I love my sister and missed her so much, I did. I didn't really want to leave Toronto. I was having a great time, but I'm very tuned in with my family. I love my family so much, and I was always the kid that was visiting every few months. Coming back home to visit or writing letters or whatever, sending money if it was needed. Stuff like that. So I always tried to stay in touch with my family. I was very, very close with them. So when my sister wanted me to move back with her, I did. I came back to Montreal, moved in with her. It was actually around this time that I was meeting more and more people in the congregation organization and started, clubbing a little more. So I was kind of spreading myself a little bit thin, actually. I was, doing my pioneer work, going to clubs, having a part-time job, as a sales manager. So it was a pretty heavy schedule. I was getting home late, getting up early to go out on the street witnessing and stuff, getting my hours, but it was a struggle. And I was struggling, to be honest. I was having a great time going out dancing and stuff. But the irony is that I realized that every time I went out dancing, I was going to places that really elicited anger in me. I would get very angry and was very aggressive dancing, and I went as far as doing the mosh pits and stuff. It was pretty intense, and I found that when I went out and drank a little bit and danced, I had all this anger and rage that would come up in me. I never knew why and where it was coming from, but the answers all did come, and I'm glad to be able to share it because it's very important. It's very important. I've never ever been an angry person. I'm a very happy-go-lucky, enthusiastic, loves life, loves to laugh, loves music. People generally like to be around me because I'm very fun, and I don't like drama. I don't like conflict. Very fun-loving person. So I always wondered where this rage and this anger came from when I would go out sometimes, and my inhibitions would be, just lowered a bit. So it all came out, and I'm going to share that. But so let's keep going. So where are we now? So I came back to Montreal, started partying a little more. I actually got into a little misconduct. Was drinking a little too much. Making out with some people, doing a little. No premarital sex or anything like that, but I was getting a little frisky, I guess, what you could say, in some of the clubs, and one day it just kind of, I woke up. It's a crazy story, but I woke up naked in the bed of another young brother in the congregation, and his dad kind of saw that, and he. Nothing happened, but, obviously something happened, but nothing happened. But, yeah, when he told me, well, I expect you to do the right thing, for me, the right thing was go straight to the elders and confess. So we were in separate congregations at the time, and so I did. I guess, how old was I? I was 25. So I was 24, 25 at the time. And so I went and confessed to my elders at my congregation, and I didn't get disfellowshipped, I guess, because I was always doing very well. I was pioneering. Unfortunately, I did get stripped of my privileges. I wasn't allowed to comment. I wasn't allowed to, pioneer anymore. Things like this. And so that was a big blow for me, actually. It was quite a big blow. And Not that I told my parents what I did, but I did contact them and let them know, listen, I fell into some misconduct, and but I did repent and come forward, and so I was forgiven. I wasn't disfellowshipped. I was just publicly disapproved, I believe that you call it. I was, I was one of the ones to watch your associations with. So it was like that. And then it was the period of time too that I had developed a friend in the congregation. She was one of the roommates that lived below. It was like three girls of us living upstairs, and then an apartment below us there was another few sisters. And one of us had gotten really close, and she was begging me for a while to move out west with her, to serve where the need was greater. And she's like, like it'll help us get out of the city and not be so distracted by, going out and doing, going out dancing or anything like that, and blah, blah, blah. So I was worn down, and especially with what happened when I was, reproved and I lost my privileges. It was such a big blow to me, because I had been all my life so straight arrow, that I decided, okay, I should move out there. I should go out and, get back on the straight and narrow, right? So to speak. That's basically what I wanted to do. So I did. We bought a car together and packed up our stuff and moved out there. And it was actually not easy. We moved to a small Métis town in northern Canada, northern Saskatchewan, in Buffalo Narrows, actually. It's not even considered a town. It has only like 12 or 1,300 people in it, so very small village. And so the congregation itself, as you can well imagine, was 5-6 people. It was like a family, and anyone else you could kind of start a Bible study with and start bringing over. So it was like one family, and the girl I had moved out there with, the sister, it was actually her family. So her brother and sister-in-law and their kids lived out there, and then we were moving out there as well, and her sister was going to move in with us. So it was all their family, and me. And another couple eventually came, like, through the year and a half I was there, like people flitted in and flitted out. Never for too long, but yeah, so there I was in Buffalo Narrows and trying to get back on the straight and narrow, trying to do my ministry and study and do stuff like that. But something happened during that time that really stopped me in my tracks and really made me start to question things. And I'll tell you what that is. I started to get severe migraines. In fact, they were so bad that sometimes my roommates would have to rush me to the clinic, or obviously in the town we were in, there wasn't any hospital. There was a clinic, however, and they would inject me with stuff trying to help alleviate this migraine headache I had. And it was always on the right side of the head, always. Never ever anywhere else but the right side, whether it started in the eye or in the back of the head. It was always literally just this side. And it became very alarming. The migraines were getting worse. They would last for days, sometimes, and then they would go into sometimes over a week. I would vomit. I would also sleepwalk. I was undergoing severe sleepwalking as well when I was out there. A lot of stuff was going on for me. So while I was trying to get myself together to get back on the straight and narrow and worship Jehovah the way I thought he wanted me to, this was all happening, these severe migraines. And so it got to the point where I actually, at the beckoning of my roommates and the people around me, they were like, this is not right, what's going on, So I made appointments with the neurologist down in Saskatoon. And eventually when that came around, after the full checkup and everything, and after questioning and all, reviewing my eating habits and all of this stuff, the neurologist thankfully confirmed for me that I didn't have a brain tumor or anything like that. Nothing like that was going on. I was healthy brain, everything was in working order. And he did tell me though, he's like, but I will tell you that because it is localized purely on your on your right side of your head, this is most likely stress. This is what he said. So when he said that, and I heard I didn't have a brain tumor or something, I was just elated. I was like, oh, thank God. Like, oh, thank Jehovah. That's what I thought. You know, like, I don't have a brain tumor. Everything's fine. It's just stress. No, I'm not stressed. What are you talking about? No, it's all good. Oh, no worries, you know. So, but of course they would continue to come back, and I would, you know, get sick here and there, and nothing would take them away, but I dealt and coped as best I could. So that happened, and that was going on. Now, there's something else I need to bring up that is pretty big, and it's a very large part of my story. But not all of it. But a significant part. And the fact of the matter is that all my life, for as long as I can remember, I was more inclined to be attracted to women. Now, as you know, being a Jehovah's Witness or being in this organization, being gay, lesbian, homosexuality is forbidden, completely forbidden. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just the way it is. Now, obviously, I learned this about myself right away, you know, in puberty right away, like even probably before that, I knew, you know, but because I knew it was wrong and I knew that it wasn't allowed to happen, obviously I repressed it every time. I repressed it. Can you help who you're attracted to? No, but I did repress it. I forced it out of my head. I just didn't think about it at all. Now, while I was in Buffalo Narrows, Saskatchewan, and I was going through, you know, like these migraines and things were happening for me internally that I didn't really know what was going on. I was really daydreaming about, you know, wanting to be with a woman. I just, it's like I had this burning desire and urge for that, and I was, you know, 26 years old, not married, obviously. I was single, staying, you know, single for Jehovah, trying to devote every possible minute and hour serving him and doing what I should be doing to gain his approval and pleasure. So when this overriding feeling came over, where I really wanted to be with a woman, I obviously tried to push it out of my head, but eventually an opportunity presented itself where I had a little lesbian fling, you know, with someone of the same sex in the organization at that even. And it happened, I had actually landed a pretty good job as a weather observer in Buffalo Narrows, so I had to be trained at the time by an outfit like Environment Canada to get, you know, all set up as a weather observer. And I had to take a course down in southern Saskatchewan that took me away from my congregation of 6 people and down into a regular normal sized congregation at the south of Saskatchewan. And it was there that, you know, I met someone who it kind of happened, it clicked at the time, and we had this little affair that lasted like a couple of months, actually, a few months. And it lasted until the point where I felt so guilty, obviously, because I knew I was doing something terribly wrong in Jehovah's eyes, and I was pretending. We were both pretending, and I thought it was, you know, I mean, you know how it is, the guilt and the shame. So what did I do? I did what I felt I had to do. I convince the girl that we should go forward in our respective congregations and confess our crime. And we did. We did. And I was actually really quite positive that I was going to be disfellowshipped. I really was. I was under no doubt that I would be. And so that was huge for me, and to go forward despite that, because I had been in trouble just the year before even, and so I hadn't even got my pioneering privileges back, and here I am having this lesbian relationship. Like, oh my God. You can just imagine what was happening for me in my mind and what was going on the whole, you know. So, but lo and behold, Jehovah forgave me. The brothers questioned me. They asked me every little detail about everything. And if you ask anyone who's ever been on a judicial committee by the elders, it's an interrogation. You are literally questioned about everything and anything. And you know what? Certainly, I can tell you that the questions that they ask regarding what happens in this and that and the other is not necessary. It really isn't. It shouldn't be, and certain questions should just not be asked, you know. They should take your word for it when we say, like, you know, something happened. But that's neither here nor there. So I was forgiven. I was not disfellowshipped. How wonderful. I thought, oh my gosh, like, okay, because I really thought I was going to have to call up everyone I knew and let them know that I'm out. Like, I've been disfellowshipped and I'll try and work my way back, but this is what it was at the time, you know. So this happened, and I was really, I thought, okay, well, this is what it is. But I wasn't disfellowshipped, and everything went, you know, the brothers just said, listen, we obviously have to take away your responsibilities. You're not allowed to pray. Now, obviously, as you know, women are not allowed to pray over the flock, or anyone for that matter. But when there are no men present, no brothers in the vicinity or there, then the woman who has the best standing, I guess you could say, of the group, or the most experience, that sister would have to put something on their head, and get this, whether or not, if there was no hats available, it could even be a napkin. Like, how, I just think it's ridiculous, the whole thing. But yeah, so we would like put a napkin on our head, and then we could pray for the other sisters, you know, if there was no men present. But I thought that was always a joke to me. So yeah, I wasn't allowed to pray over the other women. I wasn't allowed to answer at the congregation meetings. I wasn't allowed to go in service. Wasn't allowed to do anything, which was understandable. I was also in shock myself, going through what I went through, having this lesbian relationship, being and knowing in my heart that I am more attracted to women. In fact, not more. I am attracted to women. That's what it is for me. So it was very difficult to reconcile inside myself what was really going on, you know. So that's where it all started. And I think what I'll do now is I will end this video, and I will start off from where that picks up, because it's opening the door to another can of worms, let's say. But it's interesting nonetheless. And I can't thank you guys enough for being here and sharing in my story with me. And if you feel inspired to like it or share it, for any who may appreciate or enjoy the videos, please do. I believe that we're all here to share and help each other, and do what's best for the greater whole, you know. And sharing our stories and our tales sometimes really does help motivate others. And I know for me, watching all the videos that other witnesses, ex-witnesses have put out there in sharing their stories on and about their truth and what they've learned coming out to try and help others wake up and realize that this is not the truth. This is in fact a cult, a brainwashing cult, is really important. So thank you so much for being here with me and sharing with me in this story. This is a huge deal for for me, and I appreciate you very much. Thank you.